I've seen it happen more than once. You see a laptop that looks cheap, you snag the deal, and a week later you're staring at a screen that can't keep up with the games you love, the fans sound like a construction site, and the battery dies before you finish a level. That regret is what makes me pause before I hit buy on any 17-inch beast. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. So the question I kept asking myself with the Lenovo Thinkpad P17 is simple: does it feel like a smarter, less painful buy, or is it just another oversized notebook that looks good on paper but disappoints when you actually game? First off, the Thinkpad P17 isn't trying to be a fine and light gaming rig. It's a mobile workstation that leans into the big screen, pro-grade niche, and that changes the whole set of expectations. If you've ever tried to run a demanding CAD program or render a 3D scene while also having a game like Cyberpunk 2077 running in the background, you know you need more than a mid-range GPU. The Quadro T2000 with its 4GB of GDDR6 memory isn't a GeForce RTX, but it's built for sustained workloads, meaning it won't throttle as quickly under continuous stress. In practice, I found that when I launched a 1080p gaming session of Shadow of the Tomb Raider and kept the graphics settings on high with a few ray tracing tweaks turned off, the frame rate hovered around a solid 5,560 frames per second for the first hour. That's respectable for a workstation card, and the real win was that the performance didn't dip dramatically after the first 20 minutes, something you often see with cheaper laptops that run the GPU hot. Heat is the biggest conversation starter with any 17-inch gaming machine, and the P17 is honest about it. The chassis is a classic ThinkPad black slab with a vented bottom and a fairly aggressive fan profile. When the GPU and the i7-10750H push past 90W combined, the fans spin up to a noticeable whine, louder than a typical office laptop, quieter than a gaming laptop that screams, "I'm trying to keep you cool." In a real-world scenario, I was sitting in a small apartment, playing Apex Legends for a 2-hour stretch, and the fan noise stayed at a constant hum that was audible but not disruptive. If you're used to a whisper-quiet environment, that hum might be a distraction, but for most gamers who already expect some background fan noise, it's a reasonable trade-off for the thermal headroom you get. Keyboard feel is where the ThinkPad heritage shines. The 6-row, backlit keyboard has that famous 1.5mm travel and a tactile bump that feels more like a mechanical switch than a membrane pad. While many gamers gravitate toward RGB-lit, high-profile keys, the P17's keyboard is understated, but the feedback is reliable for long-haul sessions. I tried a marathon of 10-hour Assassin's Creed Valhalla playthroughs, and my fingers didn't develop the usual fatigue you sometimes notice on laptops with shallow keys. The fingerprint reader integrated next to the spacebar was a pleasant surprise for quick logins, and it worked flawlessly even after a few weeks of heavy use. Battery life is where the workstation's gaming dichotomy becomes crystal clear. A 94Wh pack sounds massive, but under load it's a different story. With the screen at 100% brightness and the GPU active, the battery dropped from 100% to 30% in just under an hour. In a more relaxed setting, say, you're editing video in Premiere Pro while the GPU sits idle, you could stretch to about 5 hours. That means you shouldn't expect a full gaming session away from a wall outlet. If you plan to game on the couch and plug in, that's fine, but if you need all-day unplugged performance, you'll be disappointed. The display is a 17.3-inch FHD IPS panel with 300 nits brightness and an anti-glare coating. For most indoor gaming, that's perfectly adequate, but it won't light up a bright room the way a 4K 500 nits panel would. Color accuracy is decent out of the box, which is why it also doubles well for creative work. I tested it with a color grading task in DaVinci Resolve, and the sRGB coverage felt tight enough for non-critical projects. The downside is the lack of a higher refresh rate. At 60 Hz you get smooth motion, but if you're chasing the ultra-smooth experience that competitive shooters demand, you'll notice the difference compared to a 144 Hz gaming laptop. Portability is a mixed bag. The P17 weighs in at roughly 7.5 pounds and measures over an inch thick. It's not a laptop you'll want to carry to a coffee shop daily, but it's manageable in a backpack if you're traveling for a client site and need a single machine that can both render and game. The inclusion of 2 Thunderbolt 4 ports and an always-in USB-C means you can hook up an external 4K monitor, fast external SSD, or even a docking station without juggling adapters. In my own workflow, I docked it at a home office, plugged a 27-inch monitor, and used the external GPU capability, via Thunderbolt, for an extra performance.